Okay, right on. So we are going to dive right on into this. So this is a presentation that'll show you essentially, guys, how to fire your banker and how to become the banker yourself, become your own source of financing. I'm going to show you about 5 to 6 specific strategies on how to do that. So you might want to take notes because we will go fairly quickly through some things. I think hopefully you'll learn to truly love real estate even more when you're putting control of the entire banking process. Because whether you finance properties or pay cash for them, you're processing it through a cash flow system that we call the banking industry. So if you can learn to control that environment where your cash is flowing, we all like I heard you guys just mention, some of you want cash flow, and that's a good thing, but where it flows is also important. I want it flowing to you rather than to a banker. And so we're going to be learning how strategies can help, they've already been helping many of the other clients that we work with in real estate investing. And we'll look at how those strategies help you guys let the money flow to you rather than somebody else. Okay, let me see if I can hit. All right, so how to cut out banks, mortgage, and finance companies and become your own source of financing. I kind of write a few ideas down of who might benefit from today's workshop. Of course, we can look at wholesalers, flippers, rehabbers, landlords, lien holders, hard money lenders, which we'll talk more about, syndicators, fund managers, commercial real estate developers, residential real estate developers, and, as I affectionately call the rest of us, dabblers in real estate. Also, I'd say anybody who wants to grow their wealth safely and who knows how important it is to have easy access to capital, to take advantage of opportunities, get ready for emergencies, and anybody, of course, who remembers the lessons we learned in the last real estate crash. I think can all benefit from today's little talk. My name is Mark Willis. I'm a certified financial planner here in Chicago. I own Lake Growth Financial Services, have several advisors that work with us here. We specialize in this strategy. We're a full financial firm. We can help you with your IRAs and retirement and whatever else. But we specialize in helping business owners, real estate investors, property investors really take advantage of the ideas behind the infinite banking concept, or bank on yourself, and becoming your own source of financing. So say maybe half of our clients are in real estate in some form or another, and or own a business. Also, just had maybe you guys, actually, Brant, I should let you know, tomorrow is my daughter's first birthday. So we're going to have...
Congratulations.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, we're going to have balloons, cake in the face, all the fun stuff. So
that's fun.
Okay, I got a little pop quiz for you guys. Who said this quote? A banker is a fellow who will lend you his umbrella when the sun is shining, but wants it back the minute it begins to rain. Is it J.P. Morgan? Is it Mark Twain, Abraham Lincoln, or Will Rogers? Feel free to shout it out. What do you think?
Lincoln? Yeah, Abraham Lincoln.
Okay, we got Abraham Lincoln. Any other guesses?
I already know the answer.
J.P. Morgan.
Oh, good. Yeah, the ultimate banker, right? But actually, the answer is Mark Twain. He was the guy who said it. And boy, isn't that true? A banker is a fellow who will lend you his umbrella when the sun is shining, but wants it back the minute it begins to rain. You guys think back to like 2008. I don't know if any of you guys were investing in real estate in those years, but lines of credit were slashed or cut or rescinded. Interest rates, access to capital dried up. Banks were no longer lending, just when we needed the money the most. So we're going to talk a little bit about what you see on your screen here. And let's just start with the problem. If you've attended any of other workshops out there on real estate or any financial planning workshop, you'll know that folks will talk a lot about financial peace of mind. But how is it even possible to get financial peace of mind? I actually read in a recent Employee Benefit Research Institute study revealed that in 2014, 1 in 5 people who took the survey had loans against their 401ks to pay off credit cards and mortgage payments. More than 34% of people in their 50s took money from their retirement plans. More than 60% of Americans had less than $25,000 saved for retirement. More than 60% of people have less than 25 grand set aside for retirement. So we're a cash-strapped nation. I actually just read a study by the Federal Reserve. This was in 2015. They said that the average American would need to sell something or go into debt if they encountered an emergency of just $400.
Wow.
I mean, you're just walking down the street or walking up and down the aisles at the grocery store, and the average person is cash-strapped. So, we are in a retirement crisis, yes, but I think just a cash crisis in general. But we don't need any of these stats. You guys know this. We see this all the time. And I'd say it really comes down to three things: debt, speculation, and lifestyle. Those three things have really done a number on our country. Let's look at each one in detail, and then I want to talk about some solutions to each one. So the first, debt. This is according to the Department of Commerce Bureau, in 1940, if you earned $1 and you had some money from a paycheck, what did that dollar on average go to? Well, 11 cents of that dollar went to debt, 15 cents on the dollar went to taxes, 47 to lifestyle, and look at that, 27% of our dollars went to savings back in 1940. Can you imagine saving 30% of your income? Well,
Wow.
in 2015, the numbers are kind of flipped. Almost 36% of our money goes to a bank. So think about that in terms of time. If time is money, what's 35% of your day? We are working slaves to the bank for a good third of our life, and if you add taxes on top of that, that might even be like half of our day gone before we're even taking any money home for ourselves or our families.
Wow.
Taxes really haven't changed. We're in the lowest tax bracket we've been in the last 75 years. Isn't that interesting? Lifestyle at 39%. Savings is at 5.4%.
Golly.
5.4%. So, if you look over the course of those last 75 years, you'll see that the average American saved about spends 35.9% of his income on financing. All that to credit cards, mortgages, HELOCs, car loans, all that stuff on the screen there. And of course, Americans are saving 5.4% of their income, and that includes everything on the screen here: house repairs, leaky roof, flat tires, kids' college fund, retirement savings, medical emergency. Okay, so this is a brain-dead obvious question to you guys here, but will 5.4% cover all of this?
No way.
Exactly.
Exactly.
All right, so I'm just curious. There's probably lots of answers, but what do you guys think happened from 1940 to 2015? What changed? What happened? Give me a 10-second, just quick answer on this one. Anybody have a guess?
Marketing.
Marketing. Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
When did we go up to gold standard?
71.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Went off. Yep. Inflation, I guess.
Yeah.
Increasing the money supply through getting off the gold standard. Yep. Marketing, I think, is a great one. Buy this, buy this, buy this is about, you hear that like hundreds, thousands of times a day.
Yeah, and it's just commercials and just, we're in front of a YouTube and Facebook and social media, and it just entices people to live above their means.
That's right. That's right. Yep. Well, and so I think you're so right there, and it's like the boiled frog syndrome. You guys have heard of the boiled frog? How do you boil a frog? 1 degree at a time.
Yeah.
I think one thing that sort of floats in the back of people's minds, is, hey, I got to spend more money on my cell phone and on my nicer cars and on all the nice clothes I need to buy and keeping up with the Joneses. So I need to save less, but I still need to, prepare for the future. So I think the quote I hear in the back of most of my clients' minds before they really get this concept is something like this: I can save less because I will risk more and my rate of return will be higher. So now we've moved from the idea of debt to the idea of speculation. So we're going to save less, and we'll go into debt, but we'll make up for it, and we'll hopefully get a higher rate of return. So we were pushed, like you said, once we got off the gold standard, we all started really looking into speculative instruments like Wall Street. Before we got off the gold standard, Wall Street was really a place for the very few to put money in. And most people put money in things that were safe and sturdy and savings type accounts, cash equivalents. And since we've gone off the gold standard, we've really dumped a lot of money into things like what you see on your screen here, 401ks, IRAs, day trading. All of these things did not exist really before we got off the gold standard. I don't know if there's a coincidence there or if it's related, but I do know that when we have inflation, we have to keep up with it. We didn't really have inflation before we got off the gold standard, interestingly enough. And there's a whole story behind all that, but we don't have time to get into it. So when I look at most people's financial lives, I see like a spinning top, an upside down top that's sort of spinning, sort of unbalanced. Okay, we have this tiny, tiny, tiny little emergency fund, and we have most of our money tied up in illiquid assets like 401ks, brokerage accounts, real estate. And that, of course, leads us to lots of the cash crunches that we talk about. We might have $100,000 in a 401k, but we can't touch it, so we have to go and get a credit card to meet our obligations for Christmas Christmas gifts, or paying off this bill or that bill. I would rather see a financial plan looking more like this, turning that pyramid right side up, where we have a huge baseline, a nice platform of safe and liquid cash reserves for emergencies and opportunities for at least 2 years of income. So this is not like an emergency fund only. This is a war chest of liquid capital that you guys could deploy at a moment's notice. What would you do if you stumbled across a great real estate deal and you had 2 years of your salary ready to go to dump into that opportunity? If the rest of the world was in a recession, couldn't you take advantage of that? So we'd put the money we can afford to lose up at the top of our pyramid, with our swampland in Florida, or that new stock that's just gone IPO. That's the money we can afford to lose. The money we cannot afford to lose, we're putting down in something that we know is going to be there for us. Okay? So we're in this pickle. How do we fix it? Well, for many people that I speak with, the answer is keep calm and invest in real estate. Right? Why do we invest in real estate? Well, it's a main artery of our country's economy. It's the oldest form of wealth accumulation. Look at the pyramids, right? And it's a satisfying means for creating your own financial freedom, getting cash flow. So why do it? Well, you can get streams of income from rental units and just sit back and count the dollar bills in retirement. There's a lot less volatility with real estate than there is with stocks or even bonds. You can live in it. You can maybe rent out a 2-flat. You can live in a duplex and rent out the other half. And of course, the U.S. government has given us a lot of tax shelters inside real estate to defer our capital gains. Losses can be carried forward. It's fairly interesting, all the different strategies you can use to minimize your tax burden with real estate. Troubles with real estate, though, include this. Think about the equity in the properties you might be wanting to buy or already own. Do you truly control that equity? Ask yourself honestly, do you truly have control over that equity? And is that growth in the property you own guaranteed? Now, home prices have really rebounded since 2012, but they really haven't come back to even 2006 levels. And of course, we've had 17% inflation since then. So we really should be even higher than we are price-wise, just to keep up with what we were doing back in 2006. And of course, over the long term, Robert Shiller of the Case-Shiller Index says that growth on real estate is only at about 1% per year adjusted for inflation. And of course, you guys know this, that it's costly just to maintain the properties, get them ready to sell, buying them, closing costs, and of course, the wonderful non-paying tenant just drags down your ROI. Okay, so all we really have on our real estate portfolio is paper profits until we sell a property. A property is only worth what someone's willing to pay for it. And of course, real estate doesn't insulate you from the financial crisis. So I just want to ask you guys, when are you most likely going to need capital?
During the crisis.
Yeah. When do banks least likely want to give you capital?
During a crisis.
You got it. And when is it hardest to sell your property for a fair price? Okay, you got it. During a crisis. So that's the banker and the umbrella problem, right? So is real estate an asset? Is it really an asset, or is it a liability? So think about it this way: payments on your mortgage, payments into your properties don't earn any interest or make you any money. All the money you've poured into properties are not liquid. You can't crack open a wall and pull a bunch of dollar bills out of there. You got to go to a bank and ask them, beg them to refinance the house to harvest out some equity. Real estate equity is not guaranteed, as we talked about with 2008. And there's obviously no tax benefit to paying off your mortgages. While you're paying off your mortgage, you're getting the interest tax deduction, but once you have a paid off house, you've lost that deduction. Okay?
Yeah.
Cost of financing. Let's just look at this very briefly. You guys probably have seen something like this before. This is just a simple amortization schedule on a 30-year mortgage, and the loan amount was $250,000. Look at how much went to the bank in terms of interest. $179,000 of raw profit. Just profit on top of the $250,000 it took you to buy the property. That's just so. Instead of maybe going into real estate, let's all just quit our jobs and open a bank.
Yeah.
That's just pure, beautiful cash, green profit. And you think about if you do finance, you're going to be paying higher interest rates, especially on investment properties. There's higher interest rates. There's larger down payments. Monthly payments are still due to the bank, even if you don't have a tenant in there. And of course, all that interest is going straight to the banker's pocket. Now, what risk does the banker take when they hand you a mortgage? If they're a good, prudent bank with a nice underwriting staff and a risk assessment team, is the bank really taking on any risk in the big picture? All right. Who's taking all the risk on the real estate purchase? Well, you and me, the investor. So let me stop for just a minute. Any feedback or thoughts on anything I've said so far? Any questions on anything, just briefly? Any quick thoughts, feedback at all?
I think it's a great point that, my definition of a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. And, understanding, from our perspective, we see how we're hedging all those risks and how we're, making those cash flows, but we typically, most investors forget to think about it from the bank's perspective, because we don't think like banks as investors. We're thinking like investors as investors. Mm-hmm. And so it's eye-opening to see, things from the banking side. It kind of makes you want to understand a little bit more about it.
Yeah,
that's right. Good stuff. Great stuff. And that's exactly what this is all about. This is all about how you think. If you don't take anything else from this, keep that in mind. This is about how we think. And if we think like debtors, we will always be in debt. If we think like investors, we'll act like investors. If we think like bankers, we can control the entire process and we can still reap the benefits of banking, but not have to use bankers, means of keeping us enslaved to their, monetary system and their interest payments and ongoing monthly payments to them. It's all about how you think. And we are not taught really how to become bankers or how to think like a banker. That's great stuff, Grant. Thank you. Okay, so what do we want to do? What do I want my money to do for me? Ask yourself that question. Where will you keep your money? Because, if you think about it, where you keep your money makes it do different things. A savings account is going to be a little different than a hedge fund, right? So what do you truly want? What do you truly want your money to do for you? Think about that for a moment. Maybe even write some things down. Now let's just imagine for a minute that you wake up one day and you're the Pope of money or something. You're the next Janet Yellen. And you have absolute power to change the tax code to your liking. And the banking system too, let's say that too. And you have one shot. You can create a single financial vehicle, something that's never existed before. And you think about it, the 401k wasn't born on the seventh day or anything. Somebody came up with that idea. So let's say you could do it. You can make the next one. And let's say you can have it do anything you want. What are some of the things you want your financial vehicle to do for you? And just shout them out. What do you guys think? What are some things, what are some aspects or features? Maybe it's tax advantages. Maybe it's, good growth on the money. Just kind of give me some ideas. Keep it realistic, but let's just take a moment and be creative together.
I want it to grow my money exponentially.
Exponential growth. Perfect. Give me a couple more.
Passive income.
Passive income. Keeping dollars in your pocket, whether you're working for them or not.
It frees up your time.
Gives you some more time, which is the ultimate asset, right?
Love it to make me money now and make me money later.
There you go. Yeah. Don't want to have to defer, the benefits of cash today just for the future. You want a little bit of something today too.
Yeah.
Cool. One more? Anybody? One more?
Tax benefits?
Yeah, perfect. That's great. Tax benefits. Okay, cool. I love it. I love this little thought experiment because it kind of gets us out of kind of our blinders that we usually live in, to just sort of ask, well, what kind of financial vehicle would be the ultimate financial instrument? So here's a few that I wrote down. I want access. I want access to the money. I don't want to pay somebody a bunch of taxes and penalties just to touch my own cash. I want it to be safe. I want to, when I crack open that piggy bank, I want it all to be there. I don't want to look into it and notice a bunch of cobwebs. Something that's going to be rated highly by third-party rating agencies. I want principal guarantees, and I want guarantees on my growth. Not just the money I put in there, but I want a good competitive rate of return that's predictable, that I can count on. I want tax-free accumulation. I don't want to be paying taxes every single year. I don't want a 1099 every single year. I don't know if you guys even pay attention to this. I know I usually don't because it's so small, but the bank actually does tax us on that measly 4 cents in interest in our savings accounts each year. Isn't that crazy? I want tax-free access to my money. I don't want to be having to pay Uncle Sam just to be able to touch my cash. I don't want to be limited by the government on how much I can put into this financial instrument. I want it to act almost like a unlimited Roth IRA. Right? You guys probably know the income phase-out rules and the contribution limits of regular Roth IRAs. You can't put more than, if you're younger than 50 years old, you can't even put more than $6,000 into a Roth IRA a year. And it's a whopping $6,500 if you're over 50. So you've got really just a limit on how much you can put into a Roth IRA. Of course, I want flexibility for whatever my life or real estate ventures need. I don't want any prohibited transactions on my money. I want it tax-free to my family. I want it to continually grow, even if I'm not able to contribute to it. Wouldn't that be nice if I was disabled? I still want the thing to contribute and accumulate wealth for me, even if I can't earn the money myself to do it. So these are just different things. And then I want to be able to, have it pass outside of probate so it won't be wrapped up in court proceedings, where creditors can try to come and attach themselves to my estate after I die. So these are just some things I jotted down in my little thought experiment. So the big question, of course, in all our minds is, does something like this actually exist, or is this some unicorn in the financial universe? And of course the answer is yes. Thank goodness. Yes, this does exist. In my view, there's no financial vehicle that works better for real estate than a massively maximized and modernized dividend-paying whole life insurance policy. So when I say that, most people are like, well, why the heck are we talking about life insurance here? Aren't we talking about real estate? Aren't we looking at ways to get out of banking? Well, let me kind of walk through where I had to come to get to this place where I realized whole life insurance actually was maybe the perfect financial instrument. In fact, it does everything I just listed on those previous screens, and everything I think I heard you guys say too. So whole life insurance has increased in value every single year for about 160 years, guaranteed, even when stock and real estate markets were crashing. It beats other savings, cash equivalents. It earns about 500 basis points more than CDs, money market accounts are earning right now. But it's got better liquidity than CDs do, similar to money market accounts. So you can get liquid access to cash. You can get your cash in about 3 to 5 business days. Maybe most importantly for me, that's cool for real estate because you can, beat people to the table with a cash closing, get the real estate deal closed right away. You can become your own source of financing, where you can literally be your own banker and set up an amortization schedule for yourself with complete freedom. You can say to yourself, all right, I'm going to buy that property. I'm going to use this life insurance as a means to purchase it, and then I'm going to wait 6 months or 6 years before I pay myself a dime. Or I'm going to wait till the property sells before I pay my loan off to myself. You can be your own banker and set up any repayment schedule you want. And then, of course, ultimately, this is a way to leave a legacy to your family. This is life insurance, after all. So this is the way that you can make sure that they have the means to enjoy life and spend money the way you want them to. So you can put it into a trust to make sure that your kids don't spend this policy on, a huge car stereo or something like that. Okay? So this is not like your father's or grandfather's life insurance, modernized for massive cash values, especially in the early years. So we're pumping tons of money into these policies, and again, it's all about how you think. If you put pennies into life insurance, you're going to get pennies out. If you pump in tons of money and design it with efficiency for cash in mind, you can have incredible liquidity and, of course, all the tax advantages right from the start. So we also want to make sure this is coming from a mutual life insurance company. So think co-op, think mutual. These are companies that only the policy owners are the shareholders in the company itself. So that's mutual versus publicly traded. So let me ask, which of those two models, a publicly traded life insurance company where strangers can buy the stock on the U.S. stock exchange, or a mutual company where the owners of the company are the policyholders themselves, which of those models do you think are most likely looking out for the long-term best interest of the policyholders? Well, probably the mutual company, right? Yeah. So maybe the things that might be most relevant for our real estate needs here, gains are locked in and predictable. So you can say, all right, I'm X number of years old today. When I'm ready to retire, here's the minimum guaranteed value this thing's going to give me for my retirement. Guaranteed, written right into a contract. And of course, you can use the policy, you can borrow from it, let your money do double duty for you in real estate investing. That's what we're talking about when we refer to these policies as bank on yourself plans. Okay? We'll talk more about how it grows as if you never touched a dime of it here in a little bit. Here's a quick net worth shot of a real guy, Dan Proskauer. He's been willing to share his actual name and information here. And he's put a chart together of his net worth from 2000 to, I guess this one went through like 2013 or 14 here. You can get an update from him for future years, but it basically shows the concept. In 2000 to 2009, he really had a lot of paper losses and paper gains. Here's the 2000 tech wreck here in the early 2000s. Here was 2008 and 9 here. Here's where he opened his very first bank on yourself life insurance policy, and look at the paper wealth go away and the real wealth begin. That's really what I guess I'm trying to point to here. He's actually locking in real wealth as opposed to just riding the ups and downs of real estate markets or stock markets. Okay. So how is that possible? Well, we're using whole life insurance, but specifically we're using a policy that has non-direct recognition loans. And that's something you'd want to write down and make sure you had on your policy. Non-direct recognition means the policy continues to grow as if you never touched a dime of it, even on the capital you borrow. So let's say you got $100,000 in cash in your life insurance policy, and you borrowed out $30,000. Your policy would still grow on the entire $100,000, even though you'd borrowed out 30 to go invest in some property or buy a car, take a nice trip to Tahiti. That policy is going to grow no matter what you do to it, which is phenomenal. In addition, we need it to be a dividend-paying policy, paying you guys profits passively, like we talked about, passive income to you, reinvesting that right into the policy, and using what's called a paid-up additions rider to fuel and flood the policy with a majority of the cash that you're putting into the policy. And of course, like I mentioned, it needs to come from a mutual company. And I'll finish by saying, maybe most importantly, an educated advisor is necessary. You can't just ask an insurance guy to put this together. You really need someone who's gone through years and years of education and mentoring to build the policy correctly, and also somebody who has maybe a moral capacity to take a pretty big pay cut to design the policy this way. Usually they're taking about a 50 to 70% pay cut to design this thing for maximum cash accumulation. Okay. Of course, there's no credit checks. You can get access to the money in about 3 to 5 business days. And it is your money, so there's no long application processes, no gotchas, no fees, no loan delays, no credit checks or anything. And of course, no monthly payment until you're ready, which most people I recommend you start repaying yourself like a good, honest banker. Again, think like a banker. You know, if you had someone come to your bank, if you owned a bank, and they just said, hey, I'll just pay you back whenever I want to, you might not be in business for very long. So I still would think you'd want to pay yourself back with an interest rate and everything. But you've got the flexibility to repay yourself whenever you're ready to. Now, how could an insurance company even offer all of this? Well, the way they collateralize your loan is with something that's guaranteed already, the death benefit. So the death benefit is really how they are okay to just hand you your cash whenever you need it. If you were to, say, take out that example where you had $100,000 in cash, let's say you had a $500,000 death benefit, okay, $500,000 in death benefit. Let's say your cash value was $100,000, okay? Let's say you borrowed out $30,000 for that really nice trip to Tahiti. Okay, so you got a loan for $30,000, and let's say the plane didn't make it to Tahiti, and you passed away on the way, all right? Your family would get not $500,000 of death benefit, but they would get $470,000. Hope they'll struggle along on that. That's how the insurance company is able to protect themselves when you borrow from your own policy. Any questions on that real quick, guys? Any questions on that?
No. Makes good
Okay.
sense.
Awesome. Let's look at the safety of this, and then let's get into some examples, because I think that's really where this thing can shine. So, you know, I want to make sure that this money is in a safe place. I talked about that on my list of requirements for my perfect financial instrument. So first, I want to make sure it's regularly audited by state insurance commissioners, and that's how life insurance is protected for your death benefit needs, but also the cash value growing safely and predictably. It's also, on top of the government, it's audited by third parties like Moody's, Standard & Poor's, Fitch, Comdex rating, a number of different third parties that keep track of these companies to make sure they're not cooking the books. Also, the State Insurance Commission can take over if there is a troubled life insurance company and would protect your policy's legal contract, the guarantee that you're going to have more cash this year than you did last year. Of course, there's guarantee associations, which vary state by state, and mutual companies that work in your interest, not the whims of Wall Street. All right, so this is a life insurance policy after all. So that's what's called a unilateral private contract. So you are in control. The government has really very little to say about private unilateral contracts like this, which is why they're not in the business of putting them in IRAs and 401ks. Insurance companies can't change the rules on you. After you've started your policy, it's a contract they're bound to for the rest of your life. And the government can't put limits on how much you can put into an insurance policy. So some people call this the rich man's Roth because it's sort of grows somewhat like a Roth IRA, but without all the red tape and puppet strings that a Roth IRA has. There's no early withdrawal penalties. You can get money out of this when you're 59.5 or 29.5. On the flip side, there's no required minimum distributions. Maybe you guys know this, maybe not. A lot of people in a lot of my workshops don't realize that 401ks have a huge penalty baked into them. If you turn 70.5 and you're not taking money out of that thing by then, the government's going to charge you 50% penalties on money you should have took out of there but didn't. They're just tired of waiting on getting your tax money. What's going on there? Do you guys know that was the same? 50% penalty?
50%. Holy cow. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. You thought the 10% early withdrawal penalty was bad. Wait till you get to the required minimum distributions.
Yeah.
So life insurance doesn't have any of that mess. And you can use this thing for anything you want. You could take the money out of the policy and go to Vegas or whatever you want to do with the money. There's no custodians, such as there are with IRAs, no red tape. It truly is something that you're in control of. Okay? So let me give you a very quick picture of how this works from a 30,000-foot view. Then we'll get into some case studies. So in the very simplest terms, you use your equity in your policy to purchase real estate. Next, you use the policy. If it's designed correctly, it'll keep growing even on the capital you borrow. So you put $100,000 into life insurance, you borrow some of it out, you throw it into some real estate. Now your policy is growing, and your real estate is earning you something, whether through tenant income or appreciation. You're in the driver's seat when it comes to repaying the policy. And then, of course, whenever you sell that property, you can recycle the money back into your policy, wash, rinse, repeat. It's as easy as that. Any questions before we turn the page and look at some case studies?
Yes. So the policy the policy keeps growing even on the capital that you borrow. What's driving that growth? Is it?
That's the non-direct. That's part of the contract's provisions. You want to look for non-direct recognition loans to be stated in your policy's contract. That's the simple answer. Actually, we might get into some of that here in just the next couple of slides. Is that Ben?
Yeah, that's Ben. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, hold that question. We'll see if we can get it answered for you. But keep an eye out for non-direct recognition. That's the key phrase we're looking for in our contracts.
And then how is the insurance company profiting? Is it through similar to like a regular life insurance policy? You're paying a monthly,
premium.
Premium. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, let's go right into that because that's actually the next slide. So let's look at how this actually works in real time. So here's a guy who's, in this case, he's 35 years old, and he's putting money. He decides he wants to put money into a bank on yourself policy. Well, first we got to make sure it's designed correctly. And here's where old-fashioned whole life insurance that Dave Ramsey talks about, Susie Orman talks about, is categorically different from what we're talking about today. So here's policy number 1 over on the left, and policy number 2 designed for maximum cash value over on the right. Same amount of money going in. You can see it there, $12,000 $12,000 a year. That's $1,000 a month. So try not to pay too much attention to the exact figures because those numbers change with everyone's situation. But with policy number one, you put $12,000 in, and in this case, the guy had about $1,100 in cash value in the first year, and about a $700,000 death benefit if he's reasonably good health. So, and it grows over time, but it's a nice, slow. Certainly, it's an expensive first year to be sure. I mean, that you put 12 grand into something and open up the cookie jar and you only have $1,100 in there. Someone's not going to be too happy with that. Does that all sound fair to you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So next up, we're going to look at the policy 2 that's designed for maximum cash value. And as you can see, the policy has a ton more cash in the first year. Quite a bit smaller death benefit, almost half the size death benefit. Now that's really where the magic is. We've shrunk the expensive part of this policy, $700,000 to $350,000, and we've pumped more money into the cash value side of things. And as you can see, by about year 4, he's got $43,000 in liquid dollars that he can use for anything he wants. And that year alone, it grew by $12,337. How much did he pay them that year? $12,000, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So who's paying who for that death benefit at that point?
The dividends.
Yeah. At this point, the insurance company is paying him more than he's giving them. And from there on, for the rest of his life, the policy is earning more than he's contributing through the dividends. Exactly right, Grant.
So in this, it starts out at year 4, where it kind of flip-flops, where you're not having to pay in more than what's being paid to you in cash value. And at that point, like, it's a game changer, regardless of whether you do the $12,000 policy or a $100,000 policy. It's going to be relatively similar 4 years, 5 years in. It's going to kind of make that switch because the rate it's ratios. If you do $100 grand a year or $12,000 a year or $1,000 a year, still in year 4 or 5, it's going to make that transition.
Exactly. And every dollar in that cash value is liquid and available to you. You can borrow about 85 to 90% of it for any reason all along the way. So here's a guy who's 40 years old, and he's socking away that same.
By the way, if you borrowed all 100%, you would risk the policy collapsing on itself, but you could borrow 100%. Right? Am I right in that?
You can withdraw every last penny of the cash value, and the policy would just close. So he'd walk away with, in this case,
it wouldn't be smart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 5 years in, he'd walk out with $56,000.
85%.
Yeah.
Yep. You can borrow.
So
it's kind of like you don't want to. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you're thinking like a banker, you want to take every penny out of your bank. You want to leave some in, for a rainy day or whatever, to take care of yourself. But
Yep. And all along the way, this policy continues to build and grow like crazy. Now here he is at age 65. He's still throwing in that same boring $1,000 a month, which, by the way, is getting easier and easier to do with inflation. And now it's giving him year over year 300% return on his contribution here, almost $38,000 of yield that year, and he's got $672,000 of liquid money and a $1.2 million death benefit. So at this point, not only has he recouped every last penny of cost that he had in the first couple of years, because it still costs something. Even the more efficient policy still had some insurance cost to it. But all that's been caught up, and not only caught up, he's got hundreds of thousands of dollars of gains on the policy. And as you go on throughout, he stops funding it. He decides he's going to just stop funding it completely at age 75. But even still, the policy is just blowing up. It's doing 60 grand a year of growth with no contributions at all on this guy's part. And he's got $1.6 million of tax-free money he can access at any point. And then if he died that afternoon, he'd leave his family $2 million. This is supposed to be a, sorry for the pun, but a whole life solution, for your entire life. And I tell folks, don't do this if you're looking for overnight 30% rate of returns. This thing is supposed to be a long-term financial play to build cash and use it to deploy for real estate needs or other needs you might have. Sound good? Any questions on this page before we zip along?
Huge. So 30 years into it, you're at 30% gains. Is that right?
300% year-over-year contribution.
Gains.
Yep. And in the policy itself is
you put in 12, so in year. Yeah, so I'm just pointing at the screen here, Mark. So in year 30, you put in 12, you get 37.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
In cash value.
In cash value accumulation.
What you have access to, that's the increase.
Yeah.
So this is your total cash value after 30 years. This is what just the increase from the previous year to the current year in the 30th year.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Let me just ask this, what if year 29, okay, so we don't see that on our screen here, but what if the year before this 30th year, what if that was 2008 all over again? Okay, and everyone else
You'd be sitting there with $672,000 in your pocket that you could spend and buy up a bunch of properties with.
Wow.
Yeah.
And everyone else was running around with their hair on fire, losing, their 401ks were becoming 201ks. They were losing their jobs. Their house values were being cut in half.
So secure? I missed it. What's keeping it so secure from the downturn?
This is guaranteed by the insurance company to give you every dollar that you've accumulated in previous years is guaranteed to be your minimum account value in the current year, just in the legal contract to the insurance company.
Okay.
Well, see, think about it, Carl. They're legally liable for your entire death benefit. So they have to be able to pay the death benefit because they're a life insurance policy.
Right.
But you're not dead. So they will lend you up to, in this case, in year 30, they'll lend you $672,000, and if you never paid that back, and then you died, your death benefit, it would be subtracted out of your death benefit.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Yep. So they're fully collateralized, and that's how they're able to provide such liquidity on this, almost like equity in a house. You've been paying into a mortgage, you build equity in a house. You put premium into a life insurance policy, you get equity in your death benefit, which is called the cash value. You just get living benefits. So this is very different than term insurance, which is what most of us grew up learning about. Okay? I'm going to scoot on ahead here unless there's any other burning questions, just for sake of time.
You guys good?
Good. Yeah,
okay,
good.
Go ahead.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and scoot past here. Okay, so I still think we need to do real estate. I still think it has not only a place, but a core part of a good professional investor's portfolio. I do think that real estate investing and bank on yourself fit great together. I think it's not both. I think it's not either or, it's both and. So, when combined together, they catalyze the power of each. They actually make each other better than what they would be on their own. Sort of like nitro and glycerin when you put those two together. All right. So here's the story. Greg and Christy, these are two, really awesome bank on yourself revolutionaries. They are, Christy's a real estate agent. Greg is a real estate investor. They flip properties and leverage their bank on yourself plans, their bank on yourself life insurance policies to buy and flip and then pay themselves back from the profits of the flip. And of course, the policy was growing while they were waiting on the property to sell. And they said, even though we've had policy loans out, we continue to get the same guaranteed annual cash value increase we would have gotten, and we had all the dividends every year so far as well. And then Christy said, the nice thing is that we're starting to realize that we're not beholden to an institution to give us backing when we need our business to grow. So when banks take away their umbrella when the rain comes, they're still able to access cash and deploy it for investment. Nelson Nash, great guy. He says when you control the financial environment, you win. When the bank controls the financial environment, they're going to win. Okay? And he's got a great story too. I don't have time to get into his story right now, but so let's talk about some strategies. If you're not sure you can do it, this is one simple way to do it. All right, you can use your bank on yourself plan to pay for small things related to your real estate purchases. Like maybe you just use it to turn your property taxes every year. Okay, let's say your property tax is $3,000 a year or $5,000 a year. Borrow from your policy to pay that tax every year, and that way your policy is growing. 17,000 a year. Exactly. Here in Illinois, 5,000 a year might buy you a parking spot in property tax.
Yeah.
Homeowners insurance, you can throw your HOA specials through your policy, repairs and maintenance. Of course, you're getting positive arbitrage on those costs, which would otherwise be dragging down your property's yield, right? The first idea there would be just paying for those small ancillary costs. But what about using your bank on yourself policy to buy your down payment? If you're able to throw 20% or more into a property, you can remove PMI if it's mortgage insurance. If your corporation owns the property, they could rent it out to you, which is pretty cool. And you could live in it, for example. You can mitigate that opportunity cost on your dollars by throwing your policy into a down payment on a property. So if we understand opportunity cost, I can skip this slide. But the idea here is you finance every single thing you buy, whether it's a cup of coffee or a car or a house. Finance everything you buy. Okay, here's net zero. If you don't have the money for something, you have to go below net zero. So, then you start making monthly payments to get back up to zero. That's called financing, or going into debt. And of course, the banker is making tons of profit off that. But since we don't have the money after we've paid off the car loan, and now it's time to get the new minivan because there's some extra kids in tow, we got to go get another car loan. You just wash, rinse, repeat. That's the problem of the debt staircase. We're just stuck on that treadmill for life for most of us. So most people think, well, the answer to debt is cash, paying cash for things. But guys, I got to tell you that paying cash is not the answer, because you start saving, and climbing up that staircase is tough to do. You're taking the bus for 5 years, right? And then you've saved up for that car, finally saved up for that car. And then what do? You walk into the car lot and you plunk down your money, and you have to pull it out of the investment account or savings account. How much interest? So here's a question. How much interest is earning on money you've withdrawn from your savings account? I'll give you a clue. The number is on the screen here. How much interest is earning on an account when you've taken all the money out? Nothing.
Yeah.
Yep. And you can only start earning interest slowly as you pack money back into it again. So when you pay cash, you break the compounding interest.
Save, get back to zero.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So you're just stuck on the same line. It's no different really than the debtor staircase, because you're breaking the opportunity to earn that money. Not only gone is the money you spent on the car. Let's say the car was $30,000. The car actually cost you a lot more than $30,000 if you think about all the money that $30,000 could have grown to had you left it invested instead. So the whole point of mitigating opportunity cost is you're supposed to be lifting off from zero, compounding your growth potential. And that's how it works with these policies. When you borrow from the policy, it continues to earn, even on the capital you borrow. Okay, so you borrow from the policy, but it's still giving you the same dividend as if you'd never touched a penny of the money. Okay?
Incredible.
So if we took the down payment idea and took it to its logical conclusion, what if we just bought an entire property using the bank on yourself idea? Let's borrow from the policy and pay cash at closing. So we'll automatically increase our yield without risk, because we've done it outside of the stock market. We're not leveraging a bank to do it, and our policy is still growing as if we never took the money out. So we'll develop for ourselves a permanent line of credit for the next recession. right? Who needs that banker's umbrella anyway? So the next couple of slides, I'm going to just break it all down. And I think it blew my mind when I saw this in action. So there's a ton of numbers on the screen. I just want you to focus on those dividends. And I want you to kind of look at those without the loan. So this is without the loan. This guy put in $32,000 a year into a policy. And by year 10, he's got 400 grand sitting in his policy. And by year 15, he's got $515,000 of, $500,000 in liquid money. And I just want you to pay attention to those dividend numbers, okay? So I've got them nice and highlighted here. Keep those numbers in the back of your mind. Now, here's the same policy, but this guy, now we're hypothetically in year 11 going to take a loan for $350,000 to buy a giant property or a couple of apartment units or whatever. Compare those dividends to the previous slide. Same exact dividends, even though we borrowed out basically all the money that was in there. Okay, so now there's 350 grand sitting out there in some real estate somewhere, and it's giving him the same growth he would have gotten had he not taken the loan out. That's the non-direct recognition advantage.
That's awesome.
Isn't that cool? Now, I still want you to be an honest banker with yourself. You need to be paying yourself back so you can deploy those dollars again. So here's the same guy taking out a loan, and now this time he's paying himself back over, looks like over 5 years or so, 4 years. So, here's the dividends that haven't changed, obviously. And look at that. The cash value is exactly like it would have been had he not taken the money out, $515,000. Okay? So he did not lose any opportunity to grow that dollar, but he was able to throw that money into some real estate. Maybe he was getting renters paying him some passive income. Maybe he flipped the property and turned it into $1 million, from $350,000 to $1 million. I don't know what kind of return he's getting out there on flipping that property, but whatever it is, it increased the yield by using this policy at the same time. Makes sense so far?
Hey, Mark. Yeah, Mark, quick question. So let's say you buy that house, 350, you sell it a year later for 500,000. Is that 150 in gains? Is that your money, like profit that you get to, or does that go into something? Does that go into something?
It's just on the buy, sell, purchase of the real estate at closing and so forth. It looks exactly like a cash purchase. You're still walking in there with a check. You can, walk out of there with a deed. There's no difference to paying cash whether you're pulling it from this policy or from a checking account.
That's nuts.
So, the full purchase, let's look at those numbers, break it down a little bit. Let's look at appreciation, look at the loan interest, the policy's growth, the rate of return, and the total growth on the strategy. So, we have two choices. Do we pay cash for our real estate? What's better, paying cash or using these policies? Well, I broke down the numbers here for us from those previous slides. So let's say that he took that 350 grand and he dumped it into some real estate. And let's say that real estate grew by 3% a year. Okay, over 5 years, that turns out his $350,000 property grew to $405,745. So, you guys with me on that so far?
Yeah.
So just normal appreciation rates, we're assuming 3% a year. Now, he paid cash in this example, on this column here. We're imagining he just pulled it from a savings account, not from a policy. So there's no interest, no loan interest when you just pay cash, because you're not paying loan interest to a savings account or a checking account. You just plunk down your $350 and you're out the $350, but you got the house. So there's no loan interest. So there's nothing growing on your checking account when you withdraw it from your checking account, right? He took in this example here, he took $350,000 out of a checking account, and it's no longer there. So it's no longer earning anything inside the checking account. So all of his ROI is merely the appreciation on the real estate property. So we're just looking at an ROI of 3% when you pay cash for things. So a total growth of $55,745. Everybody with me on all that so far?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Perfect. Awesome. Now, let's look at using the bank on yourself strategy. Same appreciation in this example, because we're trying to keep apples to apples here. You had a 2.1% APR. So there's interest on policy loans. You want to remember that. But it's simple interest. So it's very low in terms of its APR yield. So the life insurance company is motivated to offer loans to people because they, earn an interest on policy loans. And like I say, it's well below market rates at 2.1% APR over that 5-year period. And at the exact same time, the policy was growing at totaled $119,485. If you look at the previous slides there, that's the amount of growth that it did during those years that he took the loan out. So the total ROI is 10% instead of 3%, and the total growth between the real estate's appreciation and the policy's growth was $175,000. So which of those two numbers would you guys rather keep in your pocket? Right?
Yeah.
So this is all about arbitrage, and it's all about where you house your money. Where is your warehouse of wealth? Okay? I'm going to switch gears and do a few more quick strategies. That was the main one. I want to run through a few others briefly. How about pulling money out of your properties? Once you have some real estate, maybe you own some equity in some real estate already. Well, you can flip your first property, put profits to fund a policy, or you can cash out the existing properties you already have and harvest in some of that equity. So home values have hit record highs in recent years. You guys have probably seen that. And so what's the best time to harvest equity out of real estate? Well, when prices are high, right? Not during the next recession, but right now. So let's example one of these. Let's say you own 4 properties. Let's say each one is worth $100,000. And let's say they're appreciating at 3% a year. So they're growing at about altogether $12,000 per year. So let's say every 5 years you just harvest out some equity. It turns out to be $60,000 every 5 years to harvest out some of that equity. Now, let's say that we're going to go ahead and lock in those real estate gains, right? Because it's not real equity until you harvest it out. It's all just paper profits. Whatever Zillow tells you it's worth, well, it's not worth anything until someone's really, really willing to give you that cash. Okay? So you put that $60,000 every 5 years into a policy, you lock those gains in, and then every 5 years you can borrow from that policy and buy another property at $50,000. So by year 5, you've got your original 4 properties, plus the 5th property that you bought with your bank on yourself policy. And all of them together have grown to $510,000. Plus the policy that you bought, it's also growing. So the total annualized appreciation went from $12,000 a year to $17,875 a year. So you just increased your cash-on-cash return without any market risk. It's very simple to do. It's all about just harvesting out the gains you've got on your properties and putting it into something that you can see guaranteed to grow for you for the rest of your life. Okay, and then once you've done it with 4 properties, now you've got 5. Well, why not do 5 and get 6 and 8 and 10 and 20 and 50? Once you sell one of the homes, use all the proceeds to just start new policies and pay off existing loans. Any questions on this example?
No.
It's good stuff, man.
Cool. I'm going to run through the rental repayment strategy and then I think one more, and then we'll see what's left in terms of time. Most of my clients that have these real estate bank on yourself policies also have tenants as well. So, a lot of times we'll use cash to purchase a property. Maybe we use our policy to do that. And then we want to pay the loan back so we can borrow from our policies again. But we just ask our renters, our tenants, to pay us a rent check. Well, where can that rent check go? Well, among other things, you can use it to pay off your policy loan. Just wash, rinse, and repeat. Here's a picture of how that looks. So I'll walk you through this one briefly. Here's a guy who puts $150,000 into a bank on yourself policy, and then the next week he borrows out $120,000 to go buy an investment property. And that tenant that he puts in that property is going to pay him 11% per year for rent. That turns out to be $13,200 a year. And he takes that $13,200 a year and he uses that money to pay the loan on his life insurance policy. And after 10 years, he sells the property. So how it looks is something like this. You put your $150,000 in. You took $120,000 out. You put that $120,000 over here on your initial investment, and the renter begins to pay you a check for rent. And like I say, I'm assuming that this property never appreciates, which I think is pretty stinking conservative. As the $13,200 is being paid back to you, you're taking that $13,000 over here and putting it right into your policy, paying back the loan, knocking that loan down, and increasing your net cash value. So that by the end of the 10th year, maybe you sell that property, you've gotten all your money back, $133,200. So that's your sale property, sale of the house, plus that year's rent. So you got your $133,200 in that 10th year. You've also thrown that $13,200 toward the last loan payment. So now, as a grand total, you've got your $164,000 in cash value, plus the $120,000 returned from selling the house. Okay, so that's a total of $284,000 that you can use then for your next property.
That's awesome.
Okay. Cool. Now, I showed this single premium idea. I'm going to skip over this briefly.
So real quick, I'll point one
Sure.
key thing out there. If you back up real fast.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're more than doubling your money in 10 years doing the same thing that you normally would if you paid cash or used a bank. Except you're doubling the money. I mean, you're making all the same profits you normally would, except you're doubling your money in addition to that.
Doubling your money, and where was the market risk? Where was the stock that collapsed? Where was the Enron? It's nowhere to be found. There's no market risk or volatility to doing that. That's so observant, Brant. It's a very great observation. Great observation. You're doubling the money without any market risk, and you're doing what you would have done anyway with buying the real estate. It's just all about where your warehouse of wealth resides. Great point. Great point. So you can do these as multiple payments, like I showed you before, or as a single payment. And as we talk more about this, I just want to wrap this up by saying maybe you become a real estate investor, or maybe you just become eventually a mortgage company for other real estate investors. Really, why bother with the nuisance of owning real estate? Just be the banker. Just be the banker. If you have enough money in these policies, you can serve as a private money lender. All right, you can hire third-party underwriters. You can get other people to fix those leaky roofs and unpaying tenants, and you can just collect all these investors' mortgage payments. Wouldn't that be nice?
Cool.
Hello.
Yeah. So here's a quick story of a guy who did that exact thing. Here's a guy, his name's Tim. He started a policy in October of 1996. And by 2005, he had $236,000 of money in cash. And his death benefit was over $600,000. He had only put in $92,000. So he put in $92,000 and it grew to $236,000 in about 9 years. So the rental property he found, he used it for an investment. His brother was actually getting into real estate investing, so his brother and him went into business together. His brother bought 2 properties using Tim's loan. Basically, Tim became the banker to his brother. And they ended up getting some good deals on it because, they paid cash and some other things. And Tim's brother had to pay Tim back at 10% interest on Tim's terms. So they did that with 2 properties, but then they went ahead and just did it again 22 times. So now the value of the business is $722,000. They own 22 properties. He put in $92,000 and he got back $722,000 in net profit that Tim takes. And all of those properties are cash flow positive. And then maybe this is the coolest part of this whole story. Tim spends about 2 hours per year on this investment. So that's pretty awesome. He just sits down with his brother at the end of the year and says, "Hey, we still good?" And his brother, who's got sweat and tears and he's been working on the roof and he's been fixing the leaky toilets. All Tim has to do is say, "Hey, we still good?" And his brother's like, "Yep," and that's it. That's how you become the mortgage company. So, of course, this isn't for everyone. You don't want to just jump into this willy-nilly. You want to sit down with an advisor that knows what you're doing and knows what your goals are. You want to make sure, obviously, if you're on your deathbed or something, you can't be the insured in that case, but you don't have to be. You can own a policy on your kids or grandkids, that kind of thing. You can still control the money. You can still own the policy.
I didn't know that.
Wow. So if you know anybody who wants to have a death policy in your name that has money.
Yeah. Yep. I have folks that go into deals with or partnerships and real estate investments with very affluent partners, and maybe they're uninsurable, but they have the money, and you can just be the insured. Okay. So I'm going to stop here, guys, and just sort of talk. If you want, we can talk together. I'd be happy to talk with you guys. If you want to talk with a professional who knows what they're doing when you're building these kind of plans. I'm going to stop here and let you guys ask any questions that you might have.
So
time we have left.
You probably explained this, and maybe I just missed it. But take that example you said of $150,000. He put it in, and you said it real quickly in between slides. You can do one time, or you can continue to make payments into that policy. So let's say you do one time, and then over the next several years, that policy is growing in value, whether you put money into it or not. What's driving that growth? What is driving that growth? I know that should be obvious probably, but help me out there.
Good question. So you're asking, hey, if I just put $150,000 in and don't put more in, how is the thing growing?
Yes.
Is that fair? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since we're putting it into a dividend-paying whole life policy, two things are helping the growth of that cash every year. The first thing that's happening is you're getting a guaranteed annual cash value increase, no matter what the markets are doing, no matter how profitable the insurance company is. Your cash is guaranteed to be more this year than it was last year, no matter what. So that's part of what you see growing. It's just growing upon its own weight. Actuarial science says, hey, if you survive this year, we'll give you some more equity in your death benefit. That's what the guarantee means. As far as the dividend, if the company is profitable, so if the insurance company that you have a contract with was out there getting a return in the world, and they pull in some profits after they pay their staff and cover their real estate needs themselves, then they're going to pay out profits. Since you're an owner in the company, those profits go to you and all the other policyholders. And that's what's called a dividend, just like dividends on stock. So those are the two mechanisms that are growing your cash value, even if you're not the one throwing money in there.
That's cool.
Good question.
So cool.
Any other questions? I know I ran through that fairly quickly. There's a lot of ground to cover. What else stands out to you guys?
Is there any risk involved?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So if you really want to look at this carefully, you want to weigh the risk. And I would say that you don't want to do this if you need every single penny in your net worth tonight, like this year. Because as you guys saw, the first year or two, there's some costs associated. You're buying a life insurance policy after all. So, if you can't rub two pennies together, or if you need every last cent to plunk down on red in Vegas, then I would say don't do these kind of policies. Wait until you've got some time to build something up. That said, there's no market risk. There is literally no risk inside the policy. I suppose. Yeah, go ahead.
So here's a question. I'm super pumped about this. My one thing is if there's no market risk, how can the insurance company, like let's say that they're using that money and they're investing in things to earn returns so that they can give, how can they, is there any risk of them not having the funds to pay?
Okay, yeah. Well, I guess there's a great precedent here. Think back to 2008 when we had the closest thing to an economic global meltdown as we've ever seen.
Right.
We came right up to the edge of the event horizon, basically. And you guys probably could track how many banks had to shutter their doors and close down during 2008. It was about 1,200 banks across the country, 1,200 banks, and that's supposed to be the safe place to keep our cash. Now, during 2008, 0 life insurance companies closed their doors, and throughout the Great Recession, I can't think of any life insurance companies that went bankrupt. But
the companies that you've got have been around for over 100 years.
Exactly. Over 100 years. Not only were they paying guaranteed money, but they were paying dividends and profits on top of that guarantee for over 100 years.
So there's a guaranteed
growth, interest
growth, and then there's potential dividends beyond that as well.
Based on their profitability.
And the dividends have been stable over the last 100+ years, but they're not guaranteed.
Gotcha.
So there's fluctuation in it,
but there is fluctuation. I'll say that maybe the other thing that you can find that might be sort of a downside to all this is it's super boring because they won't fluctuate like crazy. Maybe that's what you want. Maybe that's what you want in a cash account that you're going to use for your more fun investments. You want this thing very predictable. You want it to, so even their dividends.
Large employees pretty much just twiddle their thumbs all day.
I got into this because I was sick and tired of stressing out over what was going on Wall Street with my clients and myself. This is just so much saner. Talk about like just living sane. I got to believe this is for the folks that are into real estate investing or just want to build this into a portfolio. I think it really fits well. Like I say, nitro and glycerin. So good. Well, I know our time is sort of short, but any other questions? Or Brant, did you have any thoughts there?
I have one last question. You mentioned, if you maybe you do a flip and you start a new life insurance policy and then have this event, whatever, start a new policy. Is there any benefit to having multiple policies as opposed to pouring more money just into your one policy?
Yeah, good question. Is that Ben again?
Yeah, Ben.
Okay. Yeah, good questions. The best, shortest way I can describe this is think of a policy sort of like a bucket. Maybe another way to think about it is like a gas tank. My car can hold about 15 gallons of gas. And so if I wanted to put 16 gallons of gas in my vehicle, I'd be out of luck, right? I can always put less than 15, but I cannot put more than 15. So, and that was how the car was engineered. Now they could have strapped on a Hummer gas tank, I guess, and I could have had 40 gallons of gas, but it would have been maybe less efficient that way. So similarly, these policies are all designed with your kind of cash flow needs in mind. And so if we get to a point where you're making more money, we got to open up more buckets. We got to open up more policies. That's pretty nice when we're getting to a point where your first policy wasn't enough, and now we got to open up 2 and 3 and 4 and so on. So there is an advantage to having more policies.
One of the things that you brought up that I have never even thought of in all of our conversations was, it has been, you brought it up, but I haven't thought of it, is the ability, like, for instance, if I have a grandma, which I do have a grandma that has money that she operates out of total cash because she can't get bank financing right now, nor does she want to at this age. And but she could take out, I could make it really beneficial for her to take out a policy on me, and she would be able to use that instead of her cash for the rest of her life, and then she could. What my question is how could I structure it in a way where that could be mutually beneficial to her and to me when she passes?
Well,
for her heirs, for her sons. Is there a way to make it mutually beneficial?
Well, you bet. There's always a way to make these policies work, as long as it's, after somebody's really thought through what their goals are. I turn folks away if they just don't understand what they're getting into, or if they're way in over their head. But if she's on board to owning a policy, she doesn't have to be the insured.
Yeah. Well, she's using the cash already. She still is active in investing. 70-something years old.
Good for her.
But obviously she might as well do it with a policy. And so you and I can strategize. I was hoping that maybe one of your other clients maybe did something similar that you could kind of.
Oh, sure. I'm working right now with a grandfather who has 3 kids and also some grandkids, and I think at this point he has 10 policies among all these different family members. And
what do the grandkids get? What does he get?
Right, he owns everything right now. He controls every single policy, and right now his plan is to leave it to the kids as is part of his estate. So they become the owners of those policies once they were of adult age, and the trust that he's put these into can prove that they're going to manage it well. But he owns everything. He can use the money for income. He can use it for investments, for any other reason. And then, whenever he deems them worthy of it, they get to be the owners of that policy that he gifted them.
So it's owned within a trust, I'm assuming.
He leaves the ownership to a trust for the grandkids, but for the adult children, he's just going to leave it directly to the adult children. Yep.
Okay. So the instructions within the trust are good. Governing that.
That's right. And all of this goes outside of probate, so no court can tell a creditor that they get that life insurance policy. It all goes directly to the beneficiary or the contingent owner, like the adult children, for example. Well, guys, I love it.
My mind is blown.
Yeah, I was just going to say, their minds are blown. Are we grateful for Mark?
Yeah. Oh, man. Thank you.
Really appreciate you.
Thank you guys very much. I know Brent is teaching you guys some amazing things. I'm jealous. I'm here in Chicago, and you guys are down there. I'd love to be hearing some of the other things you guys are pontificating and exploring. I hope I can add some value to what you're already doing down there. Chat with Brent if you want. You can also reach out to me if you'd like to talk more about this. My information is up there on the screen.
I'm giving them your contact information, and this time I'm confident. Okay, there it is, right there. Snapshot.
And we're going to get a copy of this, right?
Yeah, they'll get a copy.
Yeah.
You'll email them.
I'll process. It might be tomorrow morning. I'm gonna process this recording and I'll send it out to you guys for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Wow. Okay, I want to show my wife, so she'll love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit stop record here, guys.